Namaste, friends. Welcome to Indian Literary Classics. In this episode, we're going to talk about the work of an author who needs no special introduction. Considered among the finest writers in the world, he became the first non European to win a Nobel Prize in Literature. He shaped Bengali literature, music, and gave two nations their national anthem. We are talking about none other than Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. He published several books and translated his poems into free verse. In 1910, he published Gitanjali, translated as the song offerings that contained 150 plus poems which were primarily from his own books that he had written over a period of time. Rabindranath translated Gitanjali into English, which were very popular in the West. In 1913, he became the first non European to win the Nobel Prize. Rabindranath was also an amazing composer and has composed more than 2000 songs. His songs, known popularly as Rabindra Sangeet, is influenced by Thumri style of Hindustani music. His song Jana Gana Mana was first sung in 1911 at a session of the Indian National Congress and was adapted as India's national anthem in 1950. His song Amar Shonar Bangla, which is My Golden Bengal, was adopted by Bangladesh as its national anthem in 1971. One of Rabindranath Tagore's best work is Ghare Baire, which means home and outside. You can also call it as home and the world. This book was published in 1916 in Tagore's native language, Bengali. The story presents a very interesting conflict between difference in ideologies of two friends and the impact it had on the wife of one of the friends. Rabindranath also presents a very interesting view on the Swadeshi movement that was gaining popularity during that time. The story actually revolves around the ideologies and emotions of three primary characters: Nikhil, Bimala, and Sandeep. Bimala is from a poor background and is married to a very rich zamindar, Nikhil. Bimala knows that she is neither good looking nor well educated, but she is a devoted wife and ensures that she takes care of Nikhil's every need. Given her background, she is also very traditional in her thinking. She would wake up early in the morning, touch Nikhil's feet without waking him up, and fill her forehead with sindoor. Nikhil is a very well educated person with strong ideologies. His parents died long ago and he is brought up by his grandmother. He had an elder brother who also died young due to drinking problems. It is probably these circumstances that Nikhil brings himself up in a very disciplined way. He cares about poor people in his village and tries to help them with all possible amenities. Nikhil is also very broad minded for his time. He wants Bimala to have full freedom in how she should lead her life. He arranges an English tutor for her and also gets her trained to play the piano. Nikhil's widowed sister in law, who stays with them, is particularly jealous of all the freedom and attention Nikhil gives Bimala and keeps taunting her. Nikhil is aware of this, but he chooses to just ignore it. Nikhil treats her as an equal and tells her everything about him, his childhood, his friends, and he wants her to step out of the house and see the outside world. He also feels that the outside world may want Bimala, although she is not too keen to step outside. She says, if the outside world has gotten along so well without me so far, it can continue to go on for some more time. After his grandmother's death, Nikhil wants Bimala to move to Calcutta with him as he is continuing his education, but she refuses. It was the beginning of the Swadeshi movement in Bengal. The sounds of Bande Mataram was becoming very prominent all over. Freedom fighters were urging people to abandon foreign goods. Nikhil also has been trying to get things produced locally, but he realizes the cost far outweighs the benefits. He also believes that the poor people won't be able to afford local items as they were more expensive to produce than the foreign ones, given that there was no industry or factories. Nikhil goes out of his way to help villagers to get a loom or a rice husking machine so that they can think of producing things locally, but for some reason or the other, it never takes off. And he continues to incur a heavy expense, after which he realizes this probably may not work. It was those days when Bimala heard about Sandeep, who was Nikhil's childhood friend. Bimala did not have a high opinion of Sandeep, as she thought that he was more of a money minded person who used Nikhil to just make a living. He was just using Swadeshi movement as an excuse when Nikhil was already taking care of him on a very regular basis. Slowly, Bimala felt herself getting into the Swadeshi ideologies given her roots. She started feeling the urge to shun foreign items and told Nikhil, I must burn all my foreign clothes. She also feels that they should get rid of Miss Gilby, who was Bimala's English teacher. Nikhil tries to convince her that she need not burn her clothes, but she can stop wearing them if she doesn't want to. He also tells her that she should not waste her energies in destructive excitement. Bimala realized that Nikhil was not against the cause of Swadeshi movement, but he just could not accept the spirit of Bande Mataram yet. Bimala's first interaction with Sandeep happens when he and his followers come to their neighborhood to preach Swadeshi. There is this big crowd and the air is filled with shouts of Bande Mataram. She notices that he had an amazing command over the crowd who were swaying to his words. As he goes on, Bimala feels completely drawn and she pushes the screen that usually Zamindar ladies use to cover themselves in those days. She feels that she is completely transformed by the end of his speech. She has become a huge fan of Sandeep. Bimala feels a very different person by the time she comes home, and her thoughts are full of Sandeep. Nikhil notices something different about Bimala, but he chooses to keep quiet. Bimala, in all her excitement, goes to Nikhil and says, We must invite Sandeep Babu for dinner tomorrow. Nikhil is taken aback and he says, but Sandeep has to go to Rangpur tomorrow morning for a meeting. Bimala stops and asks, Must he really go tomorrow? I really want to invite him and I want to serve him myself. Nikhil is very surprised as Bimala would usually avoid any of Nikhil's friends coming home for dinner. The next day, Bimala gets ready and she is in very high spirits. Her sister-in-law notices this and she mocks her. Bimala just ignores her and to her own surprise, when she meets Sandeep, she feels terribly shy and somehow manages to say that dinner is getting late. Sandeep has a way with words. He says, I get dinner every day, but when the goddess herself has appeared before me, it doesn't matter if dinner is a little late. Bimala realizes that Sandeep does not hesitate to speak his mind and also behaves with her in a manner as if they know each other for a very long time. Bimala thinks it's probably his closeness with Nikhil that makes him take the liberty and finds herself completely drawn to everything Sandeep says. Bimala also realizes that Sandeep and Nikhil are totally opposite when it comes to ideologies. When Sandeep complains to Bimala about Nikhil's views on Bande Mataram, Nikhil says, It has its place, Sandeep, but I am not convinced about giving it the whole place. I know my country very well. Sandeep counters by saying that he sees God in his country and he has given the God everything that he has. Nikhil argues that people cannot harm the country in the name of patriotism. Sandeep turns to Bimala and asks her, What do you think? Bimala, after a little thought, says, I want good things for my country. I will not tolerate wrongdoing, and if required, I will avenge any insults. I look at my country as a person, someone like Goddess Durga, for whom I'll make the earth red with sacrifices. Sandeep lifts his arm and shouts, Hooray! And after a pause, corrects himself and says, Bande Mataram. Nikhil says, I am not divine. I am just a human. I will not permit any evil in me to exaggerate into an image of my own country. Never. To this, Sandeep says, Nikhil, you see how a woman's heart is pure and she can be cruel as well when it is required. It is beautifully fearful. He looks at Bimala and says, you are a beautiful spirit of fire which can light up the world and can burn it to ashes. Give us the courage and grace. Bimala by this time is completely bought into Sandeep's ideologies. Sandeep too starts to get closer to Bimala to the extent that he comes over to their house even when Nikhil is not around. The Swadeshi movement picks up a lot of speed in Bengal and everyone gets consumed by it. Nikhil tries to keep a very rational mindset, but he's not very happy at the way things were developing, both at home as well as outside. Bimala also realizes that Nikhil was avoiding any sort of confrontation with Sandeep and seems to be deep in thought always. It was around that time Sandeep introduces Bimala to a young lad named Amulya. Bimala agrees to provide him shelter, and over a period of time, Sandeep notices a big change in Amulya, who is ready to jump into the Swadeshi fire. One day, the youth of the village come in a group and demand to Nikhil that he should banish all the foreign goods from the market. Nikhil refuses and tries to explain to the group that the poor people will really hurt if they force them to adopt Swadeshi goods, but they just simply don't listen. Nikhil says the country doesn't mean just the soil, but also the people living in it. He continues to address the group and tells them, you are all cowards as you come from well-to-do families yourselves, but you're forcing the poor people who are barely managing to meet both ends and somehow keeping up with their hard work. You can do whatever you want to keep up your fanaticism, but I will not let these people who are completely dependent on me. Sandeep and his group are trying their best to get everyone converted to Swadeshi movement and even go to the extent of imposing penalties on shopkeepers who are stocking foreign goods. A few traders refuse to join hands with Sandeep and he gets very upset. Sandeep decides to teach them a lesson and sets the boat of the leader filled with foreign goods afloat and the boat sinks. The boatman apologizes, falls on his feet and complains that his boat was worth 2000 rupees. Where is he going to afford another boat because that is his main livelihood? Sandeep figures that if he can get the boatman on his side, a lot could be achieved. He somehow hatches a plan to give the boatman his 2000 rupees, but then starts to think about where he can get the money from. Sandeep is willing to go to any extent to get his cause move forward. He knows he needs money and he has only one source where he can go and get the money. He decides to use Bimala and get some money for his cause. He convinces her that success is knocking at their doorstep, but then for him to liberate the country, he needs a mere 50,000 rupees so that he can go ahead and get his plans into action. He also suggests to Bimala that the money should come from Nikhil's safe, as it is Nikhil's country as well, and there is no point in keeping the money stashed in a cupboard when the country is getting deprived. Bimala is left very confused as she is unable to say no to Sandeep, but she also knows that 50,000 rupees is a lot of money in those times. She is not sure how she is going to be able to get the money, and that too, how she can not only ask Nikhil, but how is she going to steal? However, she is so deep into the freedom movement that she feels that it is her responsibility to contribute to the movement and help Sandeep. Sandeep and Amulya praise her for the sin she is prepared to commit for the sake of the motherland. Sandeep knows that Bimala is completely in his control now. He continues to use the fight for Swadeshi as an emotional tool to extract money from her. Bimala realizes that she has made a huge mistake by stealing money from her own house. Maybe she could have asked Nikhil, she thinks, and Nikhil would not have said no. But she has gone so deep into this that she regrets her whole action. She wants to make amends and she calls Amulya to her house and says, "Can you pawn off some of my own jewelry so that I can get the money and replace it back in Nikhil's chest?" She hands over her jewelry box to Amulya so that Amulya can go to the city and sell it as she is unable to do it herself. As time passes, Bimala's conscience keeps pricking her. The unrest, while in the meantime gets bigger and bigger, now Nikhil is concerned as it spirals into a religious mistrust. Bimala also realizes that Sandeep is becoming greedier and starts questioning his motive. She also feels that she has come a long way in her quest for inner independence and somehow she has drifted apart from Nikhil significantly. She wants to get back to normalcy in her family life and she agrees to leave the village and go to Calcutta along with Nikhil and the rest of the family. One day, Sandeep, along with Amulya, comes to meet Nikhil and Bimala, and to Bimala's surprise, he hands over her jewelry box back to her. Bimala looks at Amulya shockingly, who says to her that in spite of his repeated requests, Sandeep forcibly takes the jewel box from him. Sandeep says that his life is in danger as the traders are searching for him and he needs to run away as he needs to stay alive for the sake of the country. Bimala and Amulya both feel that even at a time like this, Sandeep is only concerned about himself and his own welfare. In the meantime, Nikhil gets the news that some elements are on a looting spree and he rushes out unarmed. Bimala tries to stop him, but he just refuses and leaves. Bimala's sister-in-law curses her and says, "You witch! Look at what you have done. Your actions has sent a good man towards his death. Are you satisfied now?" Bimala is left shattered. As night falls, the flames of the fire rises higher and higher, and so are the flames in Bimala's heart. She wishes that she had never met Sandeep and gotten involved in all of this. She somehow feels responsible that she was the root cause of all this trouble and prays for Nikhil's safe return. Finally, she sees a group of people coming with a palanquin. A doctor who's part of the group says that Nikhil's head wound is very serious and he's in a very critical state. When Bimala inquires about Amulya, someone from the crowd says he got a bullet through his heart and has died. Bimala just slumps down in a state of shock. Rabindranath Tagore has very effectively highlighted the family structures and values in India in the earlier 20th century. And he blends in the elements of nationalism and the political movement that was at its peak during that time. He also brings out Bimala's pain when she realizes that stealing from her own house means stealing from her country as well. It is a turning point for her when she clearly understands that Nikhil is so right in stating that you cannot harm the people of your country in the name of freedom and patriotism, as people of the country and the country are not two separate things. The story of Ghare Baire was so famous, so popular in its times that Satyajit Ray, the very, very famous filmmaker, made this book into a movie by the same name in 1984. Ray had the original script written in 1940, even before he made his award-winning movie Pother Panchali. Ghare Baire went on to win the award for the best feature film in Bengali at the 32nd National Film Awards. If you are a film student, this is a must-watch on your list, as the camera work, the lighting, and the treatment of characters that Satyajit Ray has given shows his class, shows his genius. I am leaving the links below for the movie as well as for the book, both in original and the translation. Thank you for listening, and please hit the like button below. It would be great to have your comments below, which will help us improving the quality of our presentation. Also, if you have a story or a writer that you would like us to cover, please let us know and we'll be more than happy to present it in one of our upcoming episodes. Namaste and Jai Hind.